All right, welcome to this week's Apex Baptist Church podcast. We are so glad that you're tuning in and listening to this episode. I'm really excited about today's episode. I have a friend of mine, Sarah Meadows, who is joining us, and she leads our Village 127 ministry. You're going to hear more about that in just a few moments. Love the Meadows family. Ethan, her husband, serves as one of our deacons, and just an awesome couple who has done so much in the life of our church, and we're just really grateful for them. So today's episode will be around orphan care, adoption. We're going to really focus on that and highlight some opportunities for you to plug in and make sure that you are a part of making a difference in the lives of those that are around us. Sarah, as we get going, just tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Hey, so my name is Sarah Meadows, and Zeb mentioned my husband Ethan, and we are getting ready to come up on 10 years of marriage, so super grateful for him, and just getting to do life with him is a true blessing. We have a 6-year-old daughter, Bennett.
Yes.
She's in first grade and just the sweetest, sparkliest princess ever, and we love her.
Full of life.
Full of life.
Yes.
And then we have our 2-year-old Micah. He is also full of life, and we just love him to death, and he is keeping us on our toes and just hilarious, making us laugh all the time. And then 4 weeks ago today, we actually got the call and got the honor to meet and bring home our son Campbell through the gift of adoption. And he has just been such a blessing in our lives, and the answer to so many prayers that we've prayed for so many years together as a family. And it's just so cool to see God's provision and timing and just the blessing that he's already been to our family in just 4 weeks.
Oh, it's so awesome. Yeah. We rejoice alongside of you as a faith family. I know it's been a long journey for you and Ethan, and man, what a joy it is to know that you are sitting where you are and holding Campbell. And from my understanding, that process is very, very slow. And then when it's time, it's very, very fast.
Yes.
Right. So I think you got a phone call and said, hey, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
We got a phone call on a Thursday morning, and they told us that our son had been born and that we could go and meet him at the hospital the next day and bring him home to our family. So it was a whirlwind over those 24 hours. But the second we held him in our hands, we were like, wow, this is God. This is all God. This is only God. And it's been just so beautiful to see.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you're blessed with an amazing family, and just really grateful for that story. We're going to hear more about that, I'm sure, in just a few moments. So thank you for introducing yourself and your family to us. I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. These are really significant questions. Just make sure that you understand the depth of these, right? First off, what's your favorite movie? All-time favorite movie?
Favorite movie, She's the Man. I love that movie. Throwback with Amanda Bynes.
Is that the soccer?
Yeah.
Is Channing Tatum in that? Yeah. I recently watched that movie, and I was so engaged the whole time. I was like,
it's really embarrassing, but that was like my childhood favorite movie of all time. So that's the first one that comes to mind when you ask.
Awesome. That is awesome. So I'm trying to think. So the guy I interviewed last week, his favorite movie of all time, what was it? It was something with baseball, Field of Dreams. You ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
It's an old school one. Hadn't thought about that movie in forever.
Yep.
And then this one, She's the Man. I don't think I even knew
it's
that
actually
movie
embarrassing,
existed.
honestly. It's honestly
that is
embarrassing.
Awesome. That is awesome. All right, cool. I love that. All right, so favorite food?
Pizza. If you come to my house, there's like 12 frozen pizzas in my fridge at all times. So
nice. I love it. Literally ate a frozen pizza last night for supper, so
it's a almost daily meal for me, honestly.
That's awesome. I love pizza as well. So do you have any hobbies?
Love reading, love being outside with my family. I like crocheting and knitting and stuff.
Yeah. Did you learn that from your mom, grandma?
I learned it actually from a family friend. Okay. And I crocheted a whole blanket with her. And I don't do it all the time, but I love when I get to.
Yeah.
And then board games.
Okay.
Playing games and game nights are like all-time favorite.
That's
so
awesome.
Tyler Womble teaches us a new board game, and then we play incessantly for like 6 months, and then we get bored, and Tyler teaches us a new game, and we just all play it together.
I feel like Tyler's the king of that, right? Like
100%.
we played we had this meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was on just planning, creatively throughout the year, taking our sermon series, like how do we cascade this throughout every ministry area? Before we started, Sean had us play some like brain teasers, and he put me against Tyler. I literally did not answer one of them.
You don't stand a chance.
Oh yeah, he's like, this is all I do.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm still lost on that one, but
Yep.
that's really cool. That's fascinating that you crochet and did you say knit? Is that the right word?
Yep.
What's the difference in crochet and knitting?
One has 2 needles, and then crocheting has a little hook.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right, cool. Hey, I learned something today. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, last question on this section of like rapid fire questions. Do you like sports at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your favorite sport?
Green Bay Packers is my team that I cheer for. I played volleyball all growing up, so I was a libero on volleyball team all throughout high school, and then when I got to college, I coached for club teams.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
So I did that for a couple of years. So that's my favorite sport to play. I love watching football on Sundays whenever we're able to with the kids.
Sure, yeah.
And then like pickleball and spike ball and all of that stuff with our friends I love it.
That's awesome. So this is a contentious question.
Yep.
Potentially dividing question.
Okay.
But do you have a local university that you cheer for?
Wolfpack.
Wolfpack.
Yep.
Okay.
But because our son's name is Campbell, the Campbell Camels
let's
down the road,
yeah.
and Ethan and I met at Campbell. So if I have to choose, it's the Campbell Camels.
Yes.
But of the big 3, it's Cincy State.
Go
Pack.
Okay. So 2/3 of our listeners, they just turned off the
sorry.
radio. No,
sorry.
That's awesome. It is a dividing question here between UNC and Duke and NC State.
Yep.
So I have said, you probably heard me say this from the pulpit, like I'm a Camel, because I feel like nobody cares, right?
No.
If you root for Campbell, you're good.
Yeah.
With the exception of baseball, because Campbell has such a good baseball team.
It is actually incredible. Like they're
so good.
Do really well.
Yeah, they're so good that everyone's like, I don't know if you can root for them when it comes to baseball because they're so good. But I think for the rest of the sports, so it's cool. It's fine. So it's safe for me to be a Campbell.
Go Camels.
And we actually live super close to there. I think our house is maybe 10 minutes from Campbell University. So we try to go to all the sporting stuff there, which is fun.
That's
our kids
awesome.
love that. Awesome. All right, cool. So let me ask you this. Do you have a favorite Bible verse?
I do. So my favorite Bible verses are 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. Be joyful always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus.
That's so good.
Love that. And just as a way to talk to my kids about how we should live our lives, like that's how we should do it.
Yeah. What an awesome text. It's hard to even talk about favorite Bible verses, I know, because so many will jump out to you depending on which season of life you're in. But I think that one particularly encapsulates like all seasons of life, right? Like no matter where you are, how do you give thanks in all things? And how do you make sure that you're honoring Jesus and saying, God, I want to bring this to you. Like whatever it is that's before me, I want to bring it to you with joy in my heart. Hey, I know another verse that you and I have talked about a lot, and really the name of Village 127, which we'll again talk about, is derived from this text, right?
Yeah.
So James 1:27, can you read that to us?
Yeah, so it is religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless as this, to look after the orphans and the widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love that verse. It's certainly been formative in our church culture. I know that for the past 5 years, we've really tried to ramp up our ministry around orphan care. And we use this verse, right?
Yeah.
This is a verse that we hold near to us, and it's a verse that we consider to be a driving text around this issue. Like, how do you run towards those that are broken, towards those that are hurting? And if you think about this text, it talks about the orphan and it talks about the widow. And the way we like to think about that text is, man, so the orphans, the fatherless, the widow is the husbandless, right? So you think about contextually what's going on in that day. Here are two very vulnerable groups of people that, it would be very common for you to see the orphan just placed on the street somewhere. They have nowhere to go. No one's going to help them. And very similar for the widow. The widow, the husband was the one that, provided for them by working outside of the home. And the wife worked very diligently, taking care of the family, taking care of the household, but she'd had zero opportunity to work outside of the home to make money. And so how did she care for herself? Well, often they were just left to die. And so James is saying, hey, pure religion, true religion is to care for the orphan and to care for the widow. And he talks about religion. That's an interesting term because, we've talked a lot about religion versus relationship. And we know that there's a difference in just kind of going through the check the box components of religion, right? Like, oh, I'm a Christian because I did this, and this, or because I don't say this and I do this. And the point there is so often we push against that because the Pharisees had a form of religion, but they didn't know Christ. As a matter of fact, they rejected their Messiah. So what is James talking about here when he says religion is, pure and undefiled when you're caring for the orphan and widow?
Yeah.
What he's saying here is it's an outward expression of our faith, right? Like this is a way for us to show outwardly who we are. He's not talking about the religiosity that the Pharisees garbed themselves with. Like he's saying, no, this is the way that you show that you truly are a child of God, a son or a daughter of God. Life Song for Orphans has a really cool quote that they posted on their website from Martin Luther. It says, the world does not need a definition of religion as much as it needs a demonstration.
Oh, wow.
And
Love
I
that.
think, and certainly the driving factor around Village 127, like, man, we want to demonstrate what our religion looks like. Like we want to outwardly express what Christ has done on the inside of us. We're not trying to earn anything. We're not trying to, declaratively say we're better than anyone else. We just want to outwardly show who we are on the inside because Christ has truly changed us from the inside out. In this text, it also talks about being pure and undefiled. The Greek word for pure in our English language will be catharsis. And this means cleansing, right? So how do you operate in a way that is pure, where you are cleansed? The word cathartic actually stems from this, and to understand that term well, it means that you're cleansing yourself psychologically, like emotionally, right? So it's a cathartic thing that you're engaged in that's helping you to be cleansed from that. It's actually where we get the word catheter as well, if you think about that. So that removes toxins from your body. It's just the idea of purifying and cleansing. So why would James use that term? I mean, that's a question that we would want to ask. We want to understand that James is describing what this pure religion looks like, because he's saying that, man, when you engage in caring for orphan, caring for the widow, and the point is simply this, man, I see you.
Right.
I'm coming to you. I can relate to your brokenness. The gospel's not moving me away from you. The gospel's moving me towards you. And you're seeing the heart of God on display in that. And so this purity that James is talking about, this cleansing that James is talking about, this being undefiled that he's talking about here, it carries the idea of, man, what we want to do is we want to exhibit the heart of God. We want to put it on full display in saying that we're running towards you. So I think it's even broader than the orphan and the widow. I think contextually it makes a lot of sense, and it's certainly applicable to our day today, even though there are systems in play to help in those areas. I think it's broader than just the orphan and widow. It's saying, man, run to the brokenness, run to the hurting, run to the bruised. And when you do this, man, in a very pure way, you're displaying the heart of God. And you've allowed some of the toxins that can so easily just cover us, right? We're inundated with stuff all the time. It can allow you to no longer focus on that, and with great precision say, man, I want to display the gospel in the way that I move day by day. So as a church, that we've tried to move the needle in this area. We really want to move the needle in caring for the vulnerable, the broken, the hurting. And particularly for us, this looks like orphan care. We partner with NC Baptist Children's Home. We've partnered with Lifeline, with Christian Adoption Services. And we have started Village 127. And by we, I mean you and several other sisters and our former Send pastor, Pastor Drew, who's now a lead pastor in Texas. We love Pastor Drew. This team, God orchestrated, and you guys started this ministry that we as a church love and we operate within, called Village 127. So all that said, can you talk a little bit about the origin of Village 127 and any highlights you want to throw at us about this incredible ministry?
Yeah, for sure. So several years ago, I think it was in 2020, honestly, one of our dear friends, they were in life group with us. Her name is Janelle and her husband, and they were actually walking through the foster care journey and getting licensed to become foster parents. And Ethan and I got a front row seat to that and watching them walk through that and what all they had to do in order to become foster parents. And she had randomly posted on this Facebook group that we're a part of, hey, if I want my church to start a foster care ministry, any advice on how to do that? And she posted that, and I was like, oh my goodness, I want to help with that. Please let me help with that, because Apex absolutely needs one.
Yes.
We realized that there was a need in the southwest area, the southwest part of Apex, for support and for community like that for foster and adoptive families. And so we ended up meeting together and brainstorming why we thought that we needed a ministry at our church. And we brought that to Kevin, and then to Drew, and then eventually to you, and made our pitch for why we thought that Apex should care about this, and why we thought that we should start a ministry for these families. And as we talked more, and I even was talking to Janelle this morning on the way here, her reason for reaching out initially was it is lonely and it is scary, and there is so much unknown when you're walking through this journey. And as Ethan and I have walked through our own adoption journey, there's people that get it and people that don't, and it can feel very isolating at times.
Yeah.
And so for us to be able to build this community of people to link arms and walk alongside, and to support and equip and engage all of these families that are walking through this whole process, even before they start fostering or before they even bring a child into their home, we just needed that community. We really needed that support. And so that's kind of how it originated. So we had those initial conversations in 2020, and then early 2021, we launched our first meeting. And God is so good and so cool. And so through the last 3 years, God has continued to morph what those meetings look like and change parts of those. But through it all, we have seen his hand at work. And it is like the thing of my month every month that brings me so much joy.
Awesome.
Getting to be in community with these families.
Yeah.
And we had our last one in August. I think that there were no less than 50 kids running around the fellowship hall.
Wow.
And the fellowship hall was full for the first time. And it was just such a huge gathering of foster adoptive families. And it was just chaos and beautiful at the same time. It was so, it was just so awesome to see. And it's really, really impactful too, for not only the parents that are walking alongside this, but for our children that are in our home too, for my biological kids to talk to other families that have the similar makeup to for our adoptive kids, to see other adoptive kids and foster kids, and for them to be in community with each other too.
Yeah.
So that alongside of the parents has just been a really big blessing and kind of our heart behind starting Village.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I love to hear that. I'm so excited just to even picture the fellowship hall being full with kids running around. I mean, it's just amazing to know that has grown so much. It shows that there's such an interest in this area. To me, that's encouraging, right?
Sure.
To say that, man, there are droves of people that want to make a difference. There's droves of people that want to be a part. I think the question is for them is how, like, what can I do? What can someone like me or my family do about this? And, our family went through this. I remember very clearly years ago, Dana and I, and our story at some point, maybe on here we'll share it, but we come from brokenness, and most of that's self-induced. It's not like we were just born into, a family that treated us poorly or things of that nature, but we made some poor decisions, and a lot of brokenness that's tethered to that. And so when you start thinking about caring for the vulnerable, it's like, man, who am I? Who am I to, pour into someone else, or to carry the weight of a family that's like walking through a difficult decision of, man, do I keep this child? Do I not keep this child? If I choose to keep the child, what does that look like for me if I consider putting him or her up for adoption? I mean, this is a heavy, heavy thing. And I think some of the tetherings to our past can make it like really difficult to wade through. But I'll never forget, years and years ago, we were at a Florida Baptist convention. So oftentimes there's nothing more boring than a state meeting. And we're at this state meeting in Florida. I pastored there for 15 years. And so we were at one of the convention meetings, and in the thick of all the boring, presentations, all of a sudden the Florida Baptist Children's Home comes up.
Awesome.
And did not expect what was about to happen. They brought up all of the kids that were in their system.
Wow.
They came up on stage. Wow. Oh man, you're talking about, like, I'm trying not to get emotional now. and I lost it. Like, it was just one of those moments where it's like, oh man, like I put a face for the first time to these kids who, like, a lot of what they have experienced was not self-induced, right? It's like we're all depraved. We're all born into just sin nature. We know this. We have a sin nature that we're born with, but they could do nothing about their circumstances. And they just keep coming on stage. Teenagers, preteens, young kids keep coming. And right then it was like God grabbed me to where I almost couldn't stay in the room, but I had to.
Yeah.
And from that day forward, my wife and I, we made a commitment that, hey, we're going to make a difference. And so we've done some things to do that, or to at least attempt to do that. So that said, Sarah, obviously you're passionate about orphan care. Can you tell us a little bit about your why? Like, why are you passionate about this area?
Yeah, so my dad was a pastor all growing up, and he was a pastor of a church in Raleigh, and he was a student pastor. So one of the perks of being a student pastor's kid was that I got to go on a lot of the missions trips that the student ministry got to take their students on.
Yeah.
And so my very first international missions trip, we went to Belize, and one of the days that we were in Belize, we were serving in an orphanage, and literally 10 years old, serving in that orphanage, and I was ready to adopt 25 kids. So I was like, all right, mom and dad, here we go. Like, let's do this thing. I don't know how, but let's do it.
That's awesome.
So we got home from that trip, and I told my mom and dad that we needed to adopt some of the kids in that orphanage, and they kindly told me that they did not feel called to do that, but they were going to support me. And whenever that time was for me, like, hey, maybe this is God working in your life. Yeah. Maybe not quite in ours right now in this season, but this is the start of something for you, and it was. And I just think back to sermons I've heard and people that I've met, and you can just so clearly see God weaving adoption and foster care, and just him building that desire and that into the tapestry of my life story. And didn't know what that looked like, and didn't know when that would happen and how that would happen. But God has just been building that desire over and over and over again throughout the years. So when Ethan and I started dating, like third date in, I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to adopt someday, or I might foster someday. If that's not something you're cool with, this is not going to work. And he was like, hey, cool, that sounds great. I would love to. And I was like, amazing. Okay, sounds good. Like, we can go one date further than this and see where things go. That is awesome. So from the beginning of our relationship, that's always been something that we've talked about and pursued, and knew that would be a part of our story someday. Yeah. And so for literally to be talking about this 4 weeks, after getting to meet our son, and just knowing that that's been just such a long journey, and it to be for our son to be here, and getting to see the fruition of all of those prayers has just been really beautiful and really, really, really cool. So it's amazing.
Well, I said this earlier, and I just want to reiterate this. We rejoice alongside of you. I'm telling you, when I told my wife about, I'd gotten a text from you or Ethan or both of you, maybe as a group, saying that you were going to pick up your son. She lost it, right? Because we have been praying for you guys, and the text that we talked about Sunday talks about rejoicing with those who rejoice, and meeting people in their hurt as well. And I know that there's been some hurt along the way of starts and stops when it comes to adoption, which I believe so many families can attest to. Yeah. I can think of other families in our church right now that's their story. Yeah. And to see this side of victory here and to rejoice in that is just really, really cool. So I praise God for that. And thank you for sharing just your heart around, caring for the orphan. And I love to hear about going on the mission trip and saying, hey, we got to do something, right? And so God's obviously written that on your heart. And you say this really well, and we're going to talk about this in just a second. I'll let you unpack it further than what I'm going to. But you say, hey, not everyone is called to adopt, but there are things that every person can do. So would you help us to understand that a little bit? I mean, obviously this text in James is not just for the ones that feel called to do it, right? It's like when you talk about the fruits of the Spirit, it's not like, if you feel called to be patient, if you feel called to be kind, right? Like, we're called to exhibit those fruits. And this is a text that's not so much a command, but it's certainly a description of like, hey, if you're a believer, right? If you're someone that wants to chase after the heart of God, these are things that you're going to do. But maybe there are many families out there saying, hey, I get it and I want to, but I don't know that we're in a position where we could adopt or that we could foster.
Right.
So what does that mean for me? How would you answer that question?
Yeah. So I think when I first got into this world and learning more, I genuinely could not understand why every single believer had not adopted or fostered. And it blew my mind. I was like, how is this not something that everybody's on board with?
Yeah.
And obviously, as I've grown and matured and had our biological kids and grown our family, I've realized like, no, this is not something that God has called every single person to.
Yeah.
He's not called every single person to bring a child into their home through foster care or through adoption, and that is okay.
Yeah.
And we know that that's okay. But I do believe, because of James 1:27 and other commands in Scripture, that it is something that everyone can be a part of and can serve and link arms with foster and adoptive families and vulnerable families. Every single believer can do that and can jump in and serve. So I think that there are so many different ways to do that on a very practical level. And we can jump into that in a little bit too, talking more. But yeah, I think that every church member has the ability to jump in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thinking in that vein, like what are some practical ways that we can help?
So there's a million ways. I mean, honestly, if like I tried to list out all the different things you could do, like when you think of foster care and adoption, like for most people, they're like, I can either foster or adopt, or that's it. That's the only way that I can be involved in this world. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so I think back to the last couple of weeks with Ethan and I bringing Campbell home and just thinking of the people that are in our lives and in our village and in our community that have loved our family so well. My closest friend, Amy, within 24 hours of us getting the call, she was the very first person that I got to physically hug and rejoice with. And she jumped on the opportunity to serve our family by getting a deep cleaner, a cleaner to come to our house and clean our house so that it was clean when Campbell came home. And then the week after that, our son was home from daycare, and two of the girls in our life group, Sarah and Catherine, had said, we'll take Micah for the day so that you guys can bond with Campbell all day when Bennett was in school. And there's just so many practical ways to link arms. So I think we're going to link it in the show notes, but we've got a whole list of 50 super, super practical ways that you can jump in and serve families. So I'm just going to list off like a couple random ones for you. Go and do yard work for them. Go and offer to cut their lawn for them. Help out with basic housework or laundry. You can go offer to run errands for them. Help tutor. You can take the individual kids, biological and foster or adoptive kids, out on a one-on-one like special time together, because in the midst of adding a new child to your home, that's chaos for your kids that are permanently in your home versus the kids that might only be in your home for a season. Obviously, bringing meals is a great way to love and support, donating clothes or help in the midst of new placements. But honestly, also just checking in with them and just saying, hey, I'm praying for you guys today. That's really easy to do in the midst of a new placement. But 6 months down the road, when those texts aren't coming in on a frequent basis, that's so much more impactful and so much more meaningful. So I literally have 50 more of those
that's awesome.
That we'll share with you guys. But there's just, if that's something that you love doing, if you love doing laundry and that's like a spiritual gift that God has given you, offer to go pick up a load and do it for them and take it back to them clean the next day.
That's awesome.
Just really practical.
I love that. That's not my spiritual gift, but I love that. It is somebody.
For somebody somewhere, maybe it is.
No, that is so good. Yeah, I love that. So make sure you check out the show notes because we will post that there for you. And I'm sure there's more than the 50, right? Like there's so many creative ways that you can help and serve families that are fostering and adopting. And I love to hear how Amy stepped in and was able to serve your family well. I had not heard that, so that's really cool to be able to share that here. So Sarah, hey, November 3rd is coming up, right?
It is.
And we have historically had Orphan Sunday in November, and this year we're calling it Stand Sunday. Can you tell us the why behind Stand Sunday? Yeah.
So basically, in November, churches across the nation recognize James 1:27 and the call to orphan care, foster care, and they recognize that in their churches nationwide. There are a couple different ways that people recognize that. So some people recognize Orphan Sunday versus Stand Sunday. And Orphan Sunday typically represents international adoption. It really celebrates international adoption more.
Yeah.
And then Stand Sunday celebrates and recognizes and gives a little bit more information about in your local community.
Nice.
And linking arms with the people that you're doing life with.
Yeah.
And so obviously we celebrate all of that.
Yes.
But we're switching it to Stand Sunday because that's what Village really focuses on.
Yeah.
Village 127 really builds that community of the people in our immediate area and linking arms with them. So that's why we're switching the name up this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually love that. And I think that all-encompassing approach is so helpful when it comes to the previous question. Like, how can you very practically be plugged in and involved and engaged? And I think understanding, okay, this is what it looks like in my community helps so much. And again, I love your heart. It's not just that's the lane we're running in.
Right.
But we're also not trying to only run in the international adoption lane either, right? So how do we encapsulate all of that? And I know that's the heart behind November 3rd. So I don't know if that's the date across the board that churches use. I know we seem to be the oddballs with this sometimes. We try to make pick a date in November that works really well for our people that we know would basically grab the most attention.
Right.
And we think the 3rd is going to be that for this year. And that's going to be right around the corner as you're listening to this podcast. Our hope is that you hear this before the 3rd. So Sarah, if you can kind of outline some of the things that we're going to highlight on the 3rd, that would be amazing. I know we're asking our folks to consider a few ways to help. What are some of those ways?
Yeah, so I'll give the quick rundown and you'll learn more about it on Stand Sunday, November 3rd. But basically, we're going to just kind of talk about our heart as a church and what, as a body of believers that are getting the opportunity to meet together at Apex, how we can come alongside our families really well. And we are serving and working with Village families that are single moms and families that are walking through crisis after crisis with the kids that are in their home. And so a lot of times it's really, really easy for churches to say, hey, help. And you're like, cool, how? And not knowing like, hey, I don't know a foster family, so I don't know how to do these 50 things because I'm not best
friends.
How
do I do laundry for someone I don't know?
Right. Like that's weird. I don't want to do that. And so really wanting to create very tangible, practical ways that we can serve and come alongside foster families, even if you don't know them personally. So really quickly, we're going to have 3 awesome ways that we're going to present to our church as ways that they can jump in and help. The first way is we always, every year for the last 3 years, we've done an Amazon wish list.
It's so good.
For our families. And we identify between 5 and 10 families that need a little extra support around the holiday winter season. And they are able to go on Amazon and add a wish list of items that we can practically purchase for them that would make their life easier, whether that's Christmas gifts, whether that's hey, we need winter jackets and boots and snow gear. Or even if that's diapers and formula and wipes and a boatload of snacks.
Yes,
Can we buy you 300 bags of chips? Awesome. We'd love to do it. So we'll do an Amazon wish list first.
And our people historically have been awesome about the Amazon wish list.
Literally
so good.
Last year. So these all get shipped to my house. So I've got to do something for these Amazon drivers this year because last year they ended up just bringing pallets to my house by the end of this. But I talked at the 9:00 service last year on Orphan Sunday. I got to my house at 12:15 and I had 5 packages of things that had already been ordered and delivered to my home before I got home from church that Sunday. So,
hey, if you're going to not listen to the sermon because you're ordering some off Amazon, that's the day to do it. Yeah, that's the day to do it. It's so amazing. I remember you sharing that story and I was like, man, I think you actually sent a picture of your porch and you were already getting items. And man, what an incredible way.
We have like a tall foyer and it was stacked up taller than Ethan and I in our foyer up against one of our walls. And I was like, kids, do not knock into this. This is not good.
That's awesome. I love it.
So that's the first one is Amazon wishlist. That's a right now practical first easy step.
Cool.
The second step is something called Care Portal that we're going to give you guys a little bit more information about. And basically it's the same kind of idea where, hey, there's a need that this vulnerable family has, and there's practical ways that we can serve and love them in this right now season. So Care Portal is initiated by a social worker that comes in contact with a vulnerable family. These are usually families that we get the opportunity to serve before there's any involvement with DSS.
Great. Yeah, that's great.
And we want that. God's heart is for families.
Yeah.
God's heart is for that family unit to stay together. And in any way that we can support that, we want to do. So if there was an example a couple weeks ago where a request was put in and a family sleeping on the floor and they didn't have mattresses, right? So it said, hey, we need 2 mattresses and able to meet those needs. And
awesome.
I could say, hey, I have a brand new mattress that I have and I can donate to that family. So it's just meeting really practical needs.
That's great.
So that's Care Portal, and that's an ongoing thing, right? As those needs come up, then if you signed up for Care Portal, would get that notification.
Yeah.
And be willing and able, if you can, to go and meet that need.
Yeah. It's
So
great.
that's Care Portal.
Okay. So that's number 2.
That's number 2.
Right. Yep.
And then the last one, number 3, is something that we're getting ready to launch starting in November, right after Stand Sunday. And we're going to create these care communities, these RAP teams, where we have families in Village 127 that need our support.
Yeah.
They need not just a once a year Amazon wish list, as great as that is.
Sure.
They need ongoing support
Yeah.
and to be able to do this, to be able to do the work that God has put so passionately a desire in their heart for. So we're going to create RAP teams, care communities, where people that are able to are going to come alongside of one individual family and commit to serving them for 1 year.
Okay.
And so there's going to be different jobs that we kind of assign in that. And part of that's making meals for them on a regular, consistent basis. So every Monday, this family is getting a meal from somebody in their RAP team.
Yeah.
Or mentoring their kids or helping with transportation. So there's very specific ways that we're going to come alongside them to support them. But that is going to be something that as a church body is going to make the most impact because
great.
it's sustainable.
Yeah.
It allows those families that have the kids currently in their home to be able to do this longer, which we want to support as well. We want to equip them to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's the way for you to live out some of those practical steps, right? Once you get connected in those RAP teams, now you begin to understand, okay, so it's not just this ethereal thing, right? Like I have a family that I'm connected to, even if you don't know them, like you'll get to, right? And you're able to serve them and love them well, which is awesome. All right. So recap, Amazon wish list, number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, got the Care Portal. Right?
Yep, Care Portal.
And then number 3 is the RAP team. Is RAP an acronym for something?
No, just like the idea of wrapping arms around them.
Okay.
We're wrapping our arms around them. We're going to either call them
WRAP.
care communities or RAP teams. I don't know what we're going with
cool.
yet. But
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. So by the time you hear this, it may be care community, but you get the idea. The drive behind this is to really, wrap your arms around them, care for them well.
Yeah.
What are some ways we can serve them in perpetuity, right? Where it's not just hey, we're flying in on this mission trip for a week,
right?
And we're going to do awesome things, and then we're leaving, and you'll never see us again. Like, here's a way that we can really care for you.
Yeah, and obviously those 3 are awesome things, and maybe this is something where God has also put on your heart where foster care and adoption is something that you are ready to pursue, and God has been weaving your story. And we also want to equip and be able to equip our families to pursue that if that's something that God has put on their hearts.
Yeah, I love that. And hey, just back to my previous comment about the mission trip, there's no shade on that. Like the Amazon thing's great, right? The mission trip is great. As a matter of fact, probably for the person that's going on the mission trip, it's so impactful, right? To like, hey, you go in, you make this difference, and it's a week-long difference. It's really helpful, and then you leave. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
It can be a very good thing. But what we're saying is there's levels to this. There's layers to this to say, okay, what about the group that's going to come in and say, hey, we're here when next week hits.
Right.
And this team that's done a lot of good things, like the Amazon wish list has been fulfilled, when it's no longer there, what are some needs that you have that we can care for? So you don't want to miss November 3rd. I want to make sure,
so good.
yes, if you're listening to this and you have plans, try to readjust those plans so that you can be in church. We have 3 services, 9 o'clock, 10:15, and 11:30. If you want to guarantee that you get a seat in the auditorium, 11:30 is the best option for you. 9 o'clock and 10:15 has been overflowing. We praise God for the people that are coming. But if you want to make sure you have a seat in the sanctuary, make plans to be here in the 11:30 service. But you don't want to miss November 3rd, Stand Sunday. It's going to be an awesome, awesome Sunday. We can't wait to see you here. So Sarah, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so awesome to talk about.
Very cool. Very good. Hey, thank you for listening. God bless you. Hope you have an incredible week.